Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Aragon Live, our weekly video podcast on December 6th, 2023. With me, I've got Craig Kennedy, Ken Delaney, and Adam Pease. Betsy Burton is off this morning. So we're just coming off our big Aragon Transform event that we had in Silicon Valley last night. Going to be lots of videos and pictures posted today. Huge event. Did some great recognition of innovation winners, including AI, women in tech, and just kind of our celebration. Aragon Transform is formerly known as the Aragon Holiday Party, our 13th year. So let's go to the next slide. Our team, as I just introduced. And yeah, whoop, whoop.
Sorry, I
Slide
flipped
for a
around
second.
on you. I flipped around on you. I think we should be in the right place now. Can
All
you
right.
see the news?
So I can see the news.
Yep.
So the big news today, I'm going to start off, and it's actually December 6th, is Google Gemini. And they basically had a pre-briefing yesterday on basically their new LLM that's kind of taken over for Palm 2. And there's a couple versions of it. But let's just say 3.5 is good or better than 3.5 today with Pro, and then Ultra coming in Q1 is supposed to beat anything OpenAI has. I think one of the significant things is there's a version that will run on the Pixel smartphone, which signals a new era of edge compute and edge AI that we've been talking about actually since 2018, but it's actually here now. Computer vision can run on a camera or a smartphone on something called an FPGA, but now you're going to start seeing GPUs on, which by the way Apple has too, but they're actually going to be made available to applications. So Gemini is a big launch. It's available today in the Pro version on Bard. So Bard just got a lot smarter. It's saying it's exceeding some of the benchmarks out there for AI performance, meaning that it can perform, at or above what a human can do. They did give a demo of solving or basically examining a student's homework, a math assignment for like a elementary or junior high student, and explaining to the parent what the student did wrong in the homework assignment. That was pretty good. So basically, the AI wars are here. I'm expecting that we're going to see quarterly updates on LLMs from all the providers. This is the new race. LLMs are kind of already hitting commodity status, but it's not about the LLM, it's about the training of the LLM. That's the new bigger race. And our take is that, role-based, AI is going to be better than horizontal, meaning that if you train it to write sales letters, it's going to be great at writing sales letters. Whereas a standard Copilot or a standard Duet is good at maybe writing, but not writing a sales introduction letter. So
Jim,
comments from the team?
yeah, I have some speculation about, kind of these different major solutions from Microsoft, ChatGPT, et cetera. I think Google has a tremendous advantage in the generic model area because of the amount of information that's collected over time about, photography or, written documents, searches people have done, et cetera. But in the very specific implementations, I still think, probably AWS and Microsoft probably have a better chance of succeeding there because I think, it comes back to Google's marketing. They haven't been as good at marketing those real specific solutions we've talked about that would be the cornerstone of AI going forward. So I think in the generic thing with Bard, has a lot of potential to be, maybe the top winner here as Chrome has been in the browsing wars. But in the very specific areas, I think Microsoft and AWS probably still hold cards because of their better approach to enterprises and specific applications.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Well, you're bringing it. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I was going to say just a couple of quick observations. One, I'm excited because the being able to run on the edge device. I've got a Pixel 8 Pro, and that's the device they've actually targeted. It's going to take advantage of the Google V3 processor, which is like state of the art. It's a tremendous GPU for that. Um, it's funny, Jim, as you were talking and Ken were talking, I had this flashing thought of, Salesforce went through their industry cloud segmentation of the whole CRM market. I tend to look at this as the segmentation of AI, where their very specific use cases get very, very detailed and very, very good, right? It's the security co-pilots and each of the different GPT models that are going to be coming out. That's where the power of AI is going to come in and just shine tremendously.
Yeah, so I want to just throw something out because one thing that's important for people to know is that, you know, Amazon is kind of right now dependent on Anthropic because some of their stuff from Lab 128 is not out.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that right now it's OpenAI and Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't have its own LLM. So yeah, I agree that the marketing from Google needs to be a lot better, but right now the dark horse is Amazon. Like they're on the outside, and really did their announcements at reInvent. And by the way, we need to talk about reInvent a little bit as well. We didn't put that on here, but
Mm-hmm.
the big news was, oh, we've got, we're partnering with Anthropic, Bedrock, Bedrock, Bedrock.
Yeah.
But what, so we'll talk about it. But again, Google waited a week to basically throw down on Gemini, I think, to take the air out of AWS reInvent.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
We should also mention that, we saw announcements by Microsoft wanting to make their own GPU and Amazon wanting to make their own GPU and AMD's making GPUs. Google already has the TensorFlow chips, right? So they are a bit ahead in their own designs relative to the other.
So Ken just brought up the other part of their announcement is they've got a new TPU that's like a 5P. That I don't get the number exactly right, but they do have a new set of TensorFlow units, and so that's the new race that we were just talking about in the pre-briefing, which is it's the TPU V5P that's coming out. And by the way, they had the V5E that came out in 2023 and the V4. So there is a race in GPUs that is pretty wild, and that's kind of one of the underlying things is that both at Ignite, Microsoft announced their new, basically NVIDIA alternative. Amazon has them. Google's had them for years. And so this is an examination of the new architecture for system processing, forward-looking, software design that we'll be talking about in future research, that GPUs are coming into their heyday and that CPUs still are valuable, but not as valuable when you talk about AI workloads. So it's a very interesting paradigm. And I think the other thing that I think is worth talking about, because there's so much focus on Google and Amazon and Microsoft, and also this sleeper called Oracle. A lot of the profit today in SaaS computing is taken by the big 5 or 6 providers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, leaving very little for small SaaS companies. And so we'll be talking about that as well as a change. We've been talking about hybrid computing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've also been talking about edge. And, when you look at profitability of SaaS software companies, we're saying that there's going to be other alternatives when you look at Kubernetes and managed services. It's not all, those big, tech titans now take all the profit, because they are taking all the profit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at profitability this year, very few companies have been that profitable in SaaS software. But if you look at the big ones, they've been, double-digit growth, 20% plus growth. And by the way, if they miss their growth by like a percentage point, then their stock took a hit. So I think there's a lot of things to talk about as we look at this new emerging AI architecture. Betsy's not here, but she kind of covers that. So there's a lot to start to say, but we're going to be talking about LLM launches pretty much every month for the next couple of years.
Jim, didn't you also say you thought Broadcom might be the foundry for a lot of these GPU chips?
Yes, yeah, I did see an article a couple weeks ago, and it did confirm that Google was outsourcing its manufacturing, and I'm pretty sure Microsoft's not going to manufacture their own stuff. So that's another thing we need to look at supply chain and start to figure that out. But here's the other thing, and we'll be doing some work on this. You know, there is a little bit of a lock-in thing when you look at some of these processors. NVIDIA says you can change workloads. But one of the things is becoming a gating issue for software companies. Again, this is kind of directed at both buyers of software and the providers of software. Is if you use the tools for some of these cloud providers and you use their database, it's very hard to migrate. If you don't use their tools and you say you want to basically have a real NoSQL database, not their proprietary version of NoSQL, then you can move. So one of the things people got to look at is portability and not getting locked in. It was the same thing in the years past with different vendors' hardware, right? If you use that kit, you're locked in.
Yep.
So nothing's really changed. It's just that people are realizing that. Wait a minute, I didn't know that it was going to cost that much to run my app up there, and that's a revelation. We have to have discussions with many providers. Like, how come you didn't know that?
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
it's fine. Yeah.
that brings up something else, Jim. In the early CPU days, there was always Intel and the backup was AMD. That was enforced so that people always had a second source.
Mm-hmm.
In this wars, what you're really bringing out is you're going to be tied to whatever chip you select at the very beginning, and you cannot get away from that. And so if you ever have supply chains, there's not problems. There's not a backup anymore.
AMD's made noises about their stuff. You haven't heard as much from Intel about GPUs, and I mean, we're going to look at this whole supply chain and start uncovering this and start to understand this whole thing. And again, we will be talking about some trends like GPU computing as we look at trends research for first quarter. But I did give a talk last week in Sydney about the future of AI, and we did talk about extensively both cloud computing and winding down of the SaaS era and the winding up of the GPU era. And there's more than just that, but there are some major things that are happening. And that's why you see these big tech titans racing to have more GPUs, racing. So there's a reason for that. And part of our reason is to be able to explain that to the buyers and the providers so they don't make mistakes. Okay, let's move on. So there's a lot to unpack here. I'll be writing something about Gemini, but we'll also be doing a summary of reInvent. I mean, the thing is, reInvent, they throw down 57,000 people at reInvent, a lot of different announcements, a lot of enhancements to existing stuff, clearly pitching to their own base. But all I'm going to tell you is if you want to go buy a car today and they said, this is fantastic, we're going to have you over to the factory and you're going to sign up for a subscription right now and we're going to sell you the parts and you can build your own car. And that's the pitch that Amazon's making to people when they want to buy a contact center. And that's what Twilio is pitching to. Come on in, sign up right now. This is so fantastic that you're going to sign up. You can start developing right now. But, here's my take is no one could build a car if you went to a factory and they gave you the tools. No one could build, an F-35 fighter jet. No one can build AI applications like off the shelf today. Very few, very, very few. And certainly when you talk about contact center, almost as complicated as ERP, no real firm is going to be able to do that. And so the fallacy of Amazon and Twilio pitching this to buyers is how dumb can they be? And the answer is that's why we don't cover those two vendors in our contact center coverage, because that's not fair to a buyer. It's commercial, off-the-shelf software, COTS. It's not develop your own. So that's why when you start looking at these people say, hey, come on over here and start developing on Bedrock. Really? So really, how many months is it going to take me to develop my AI application? And the whole time they're just printing money while you fiddle. And so it's a great kind of suck you in on the developer side. But I'm just saying is that's what, people start to realize, like, wait a minute, we can't make money. But it's a fantastic pitch, but I'm calling them out, and we're going to be talking more about this, which is the fallacy of developing using, go develop on your own, run, TensorFlow on a Mac M1, M2, or M3 system and do your development on your own machine. And then upload it and run it somewhere where you have some cost efficiency. Ken, you want to talk about quantum from IBM?
Actually, that's correct.
Yeah, and
Great,
Ken,
sorry.
you can jump in to give comment too. But yeah, IBM launched their new system called Quantum System 2. Some background on IBM has been very deep in quantum computing research. Probably IBM and Google are two of the other than some other smaller companies, but for the massive companies, they have been battling back and forth for on the race to how many qubits a particular quantum computer can have. IBM has been on a milestone trek. Every year they've been producing quantum computers with double the qubits, all the way from, oh God, they started back in 2019 with 27 qubits. Last year, almost always in November or December, they've announced, last year it was 433 qubits, which set the gold standard. They just announced their Condor with 1121 qubits. This announcement is a major change in that direction. They're looking at a technology change that'll give them things approaching 100,000 qubits, which all of a sudden becomes real. It can do massive computation of things that you couldn't even think about doing on a computer before. So IBM has been, as I'd said, very good at meeting milestones. So the fact that they came out and put a roadmap in place to get to this is pretty impressive, and we'll see over the next year if they stay on track for it. But definitely a huge leap, and they're looking at this in an error correction standpoint, which is one of the major problems with quantum computing, is getting repeatable computation from them because of error correction. So
Yeah, by the way, on 60 Minutes this past Sunday, there was a session, about this particular area. And the session was a bit misleading because they just talked about it as a generalized increase dramatically in computing.
yeah.
I think we talked about it to say that quantum computing should be recognized as solving certain kinds of problems like in security and not everything that can be done. And I think if we backtrack on what we just talked about, we kind of see GPUs going toward AI. We see CPUs still being there, although, as Jim said, flattening out a little bit about sort of complex general purpose problems. And then the quantum really adds specialized, probably likely security type solutions. So we have different architectures now in the chip designs that are targeted toward different types of problems. Very interesting development, I think, there. Would you agree with that, Craig?
I would agree with that. And, just to put a finer edge on it too, I mean, quantum computing is still a ways off. A lot of this is, very educational and very research based. It's interesting, you can go and actually access quantum computing on some of the providers like AWS and IBM Cloud. However, it is not a practical solution for things yet, but it's stunning how fast this is growing. And the prospect of being able to have a functional quantum computer, as you said, Ken, it solves some problems that just are intractable in today's hardware solutions.
Wonder if there'll ever be a quantum GPU, given each qubit could be its own, processor within a GPU architecture. So something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots to talk about quantum software. There's a lot to talk about there, and that's an area that is many firms are still just doing hardware design. If you build it, maybe they'll come, right?
Yeah.
Salesforce had a great quarter. We spent some time talking about this. So I think Q3 was up 11%. So the reason we're highlighting this is people are starting to rebound, and that their quarters are looking better than they were in Q2. But it's been a very tough year. I think Silicon Valley Bank, going belly up. was not good for Silicon Valley. But I think, people have been tightening, and the Q4, a lot of firms are saying, hey, they're looking much better, because people are seeing that maybe the Fed is going to, back off, which it looks like they are going to pause some of the rate increases. So we'll see. But again, it's good that they, I think Ken was commenting they finally kind of absorbed Slack, but I would still say that, Slack is not looking good. It's not looking good.
Yeah. Waste.
Teams is just crushing them.
Yeah. And we ought
Microsoft
to
Teams is
advise
crushing them,
everybody
crushing them.
to look back at our our session like this, our Aragon Live. When that announcement was made, we basically all said it was not going to do much.
Yeah.
So we were 100% right on that one.
Yeah. Meta and IBM.
Yeah. So the
alliance.
next item is an announcement that was made yesterday. The big leaders were really Meta and IBM. There's some 50 companies involved with this. Some people have kind of joked that this is an alliance of the left behind people in AI, or people that want to be, a little bit upset that Google, Microsoft, and Amazon have really jumped out to the big lead here. There are 50 companies. They're trying to put together a framework for open AI usage. Having watched these alliances for years and years, especially ones launched by IBM, is there really a good idea conceptually? It's hard to argue with them. But over time, given that there are 50 people and they're all desperate to make money, they start to kind of go off on their own a little bit, and you start to see proprietary implementations. The only time these alliances really work is when there's a really hardcore certification process that's done by an independent entity, such as the Wi-Fi Alliance, which is much smaller, of course, in scope, but that's one that's really always worked for us. So I think it's a good idea. We'll see what happens. Some people have also said this is trying to revive Watson. That hasn't done well. I think, Adam, you were talking about that as not so successful the other day. Maybe you want to comment on that. But
well, yeah,
they made the announcement. It's a big deal. There are a lot of people involved. We'll see if it has any effect. Adam, you got a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think we've seen, across the board, a lot of just a sense that Watson was a bit of a flop, but in particular, some of the use cases, like the health use case, where we're seeing that this is something they've been working on for a long time, but they have not been able to deliver anything near the quality of the LLMs that are wowing everybody. And so, interested to see what happens, because Facebook is definitely kind of in the opposite corner, where they're really pushing forward the language model stuff, at least as far as open source stuff goes. Not to mention all of the content AI stuff they're doing. But so yeah, I'm hoping that maybe the partnership can breathe some life into IBM's AI customer experiences, because it definitely has not held up to what it was promised to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. 50 organizations sounds impressive until you actually dig down into the list, Ken. And it's a whole bunch of different colleges and universities to start with. And the one that really jumped out at me is the list of hardware vendors. It's like, the AMDs and the Intels of the world, and they're going, yeah, you go, you let's open source AI, because then everyone will want to use AI, which means I sell more hardware.
Yeah. So we'll see. It could.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, they did.
Go ahead.
We did talk about, the Watson X launch that happened over the summer. So IBM has updated its stuff, but it needs to be louder. When you talk about being lost in the wars, I mean, Google's front and center, making big press announcements. The IBM Think conference was not well covered.
Yeah. Yeah, and their Watson
not well
X is
covered.
really good too, Jim. So
yeah.
Big.
All right, Ken, you want to talk about Windows 12?
Yeah. So the last one is an expected launch date has been leaked for Windows 12, and it's really everybody. The laptop manufacturers have not done well. Dell stock was down just the other day. They're desperate for something to bring to the market to get people to buy new laptops, and they desperately Windows Windows 11, there really hasn't been, much exciting in that particular product. And the problem really, goes back to this. If you think back maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was always a great excitement about a Windows launch because it was once a year. It happened all at the same time. You knew the features that were coming, and everybody had a chance to get excited about them. Well, then when Microsoft moved to this sort of, dynamic launch with sort of real-time launch things, there was no real buildup of excitement of a particular product, of the Windows product, and what would be in it, and what you could use, time to educate yourself on, to get ready for these things. So they kind of lost that. And Windows is just sort of something out there that we all use, and many people probably don't even know what version they're running. So Microsoft has a chance here. I'm not sure they will take it up on it, but they have a chance here to help the PC market by making a statement on this. According to what people have heard about Windows 12, it's got some really good features. We'll see what they are. It's really hard to put a lot of new things except moving things around. If we look at what Microsoft has done, they kind of moved things around in the last couple of releases, not really anything substantial. So we'll see. Maybe AI will be much more integrated.
Yeah.
That's probably likely, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was going to ask about I've read about AI rumors in Windows 12 built in, so that might be an interesting play. I could see the hardware vendors being excited if if you look back at Windows 10, that drove a whole bunch of PC sales, right? A whole bunch of laptop sales because Windows 7 hardware, there was a whole bunch that were fairly new that weren't supported with Windows 10, which made a lot of the user community very upset, but it drove a whole bunch of sales.
Yeah.
So but this brings up another thing, and we talked about this a little bit. So when you actually look at these systems on the chip designs for like the Apple Mac, which we're starting to migrate, we started the last 2 years, but now the M3 chip is out, so we're going to be migrating people like Adam over to the system on a chip. So we need to start looking at these designs for phones, laptop computers, and servers. Used to be called servers, now they're just called racks. What's the new design going to be, and how is it going to evolve? Because that's coming.
Yeah, I think that's a real big finding of our session today is that, we've been talking software, and the revolution now is maybe the hardware, now is taking it's becoming much more important for us to talk about. It determines the future of how applications will run in many cases. And that's kind of new news.
Yeah. We've been talking about that for a while on the AI side, Ken, right? Is covering all the impressive improvements in all the GPUs, TPUs, FPGAs. It drives AI processing tremendously, and it's incredibly important. You couldn't do half of what we're doing with AI today if it wasn't the hardware.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about here, obviously, but Ken's point is well taken. So we're going to be looking at this whole rise of, we've tracked FPGAs for a long time, which is, again, firmware for running algorithms. But now with the GPUs, with things like Apache Apollo, and, the rise of the GPU era, it does start to, you start to look at, and by the way, we also talked about, not a lot in the call here, the database wars, and proprietary databases versus open databases, how you use LLMs with databases. So there's a lot on the emerging AI architecture, and that's kind of Betsy's area, but that's some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in some of our Q1 research.
Yeah,
so
check out
Aragon Live.
Check out bar.google.com. You can start comparing it today. So.
Yep. So look, it's been Aragon Live here on December 6th. We'll post this up on the Aragon Insight Network. And and we'll be posting pictures from our event last night as well. So everybody, ho, ho, ho. We're going to be also talking about our top tech gifts in the next couple of weeks with some cool blogs. So we got our Aragon holiday party today at the office. So happy holidays, and we'll catch you next week.